actually have the car running before doing this. Warm up the engine oil, clock up the back wheels, jack up the car. Now we're going to drain the engine oil. 10mm bolts, and there's again a couple of screwy ones, I think. Move this. No, 4 normal screws for underneath ones here, like up and around there, and then right at the back, underneath and up to that point up there, you got like a machine screw one, all 10mm. The engine oil was a 14mm, so you take off the plug up here, with a cap to help that. We're going to loosen the water pump. 4 10mm bolts. Use one to a spanner just to hold it there, and then use your socket or another spanner to turn it. Loosen them, don't take it off, and then we're going to take the rest of the drive belt off, auxiliary belt, whatever you want to call it. If your socket falls whilst you've got an oil pan underneath, it will always go inside. Use a crowfoot, 10mm one, with that sort of shape there, the encapsulated ones, and slot that on over there. You won't get a socket in there, and the spanner's a bit annoying, and you can end up rounding the bolts. Rounded up one of them, and I definitely had to use that. And even though it started to round with a spanner, crappy old spanners, using this, got a good grip on it, and managed to undo it, luckily. So now we're back, gonna get these 4 bolts here undone. So once you've undone these, or loosened these 4 bolts here, obviously you hold on to one bolt with one 10mm to undo the other 10mm, and then when you get to the last one, that's then kind of tightened up because you've been using that to pry off the other one. But because you've been using that to pry off the other one, it's a bit easier to do. You can then just grab hold of the auxiliary belt and use that as a bit of force to stop it from moving, and then just undo it. I do recommend getting some Tang tools, which I'll do a video on at some other time. That's really good. These are like it undone a rounded one. At the bottom here, got to loosen this bolt here for the alternator. Loosen that with a 14mm socket. With a 12mm socket, loosen the lock bolt, loosen the adjuster, and then pull it forwards and take off the auxiliary. Get better access with a spanner in there rather than an actual socket. So with this one, you can't get that out without taking out the engine mount by the look of it. So I think I'm going to have to do that later anyway, so I'm going to leave it in place at the moment. So I'll just put I'll remove this later, but just with a bit of pencil, F for front, B for back. So when you come putting it on next time, know which way around it goes. Next, take off the air filter, unclip it, remove the actual filter, take this bit off, undo your screws, disconnect the mass airflow sensor and the other one, whatever that is. Unscrew this nut here, I think it's a 12, that's for the purge VSV, I think it's VSV, whatever that is, to leave that assembly as a whole. So undo that 12mm, and down there's a third 12mm. They actually recommend to remove the cowling in doing this job, but let's see how we go without it. I mean, I'm following Haynes, and Haynes is a bit different to the actual Toyota manual, because Haynes is like, I think covers the 2NF, not the 2NS. Tell a lie there, 10mm. Disconnect the 2 ventilation hoses, remove the dipstick and the wiring harnesses. I believe all we have to do is remove this belt and this belt, and they're going to be like a 10. Yep. Disconnect, you have to disconnect that. Then this should just come this way. Remove these coils. So I've removed my ignition coils and just labelled them 1, 2, 4. Remove this. There's probably a little clamp down here somewhere. Move this to the side. What's that? Some other sensor. Do I have to remove that? Do I have to remove that? Just pull this to one side, and then we're going to undo these 4 bolts. What we are going to do is remove this little clippy thing on here that holds on this bracket there. So there's 11 bolts and 2 nuts. I did say that it come with a washer, but I can't really see a washer in there. And we're just going to wriggle this and pull that off. So there is kind of 2 little washer things that go on there. I'm going to have a look at the seal, make sure the new seal I bought is the same, and hoping to get some of them in there. I'm just going to cling film over this. Note here and here here and here. I've read somewhere before that when you come to reassemble, you need to put some extra gloopy stuff around here. So I think that's what that is there and there. So I'm going to cover up this bit here so I don't get no crap going in for when I'm working on the rest of it. So I've got an O-ring, comes with those 2 little washers, exactly the same kit. This is like, needs to be flipped over, so if that bit is, that bit goes across, then down, then there, then back up and around. That's just loosely covered it over there. It's not tight. Obviously make sure the engine's not hot. You're not going to melt any plastic anywhere, but that'll just stop any debris getting in there. Now if yours has got a service hole on the crankshaft pulley, you can probably fabricate this sort of tool, but mine ain't, so I'm using one of them. And we're just going to remove the bolt from the crankshaft, and then we're going to remove the water pump pulley. We've already undone them earlier, and in fact I believe we've got those holes on there so we didn't have to use one spanner and then the other spanner. Again, that's the difference between Haynes and Toyota. He on there tight. He on there mega tight. Jesus creepers. Okay, so I think me's going to use the old bloody thingy bob gun. Plan B. Undo these and lower the bloody engine down so I can get that bloody gun in there. Now the Toyota doesn't actually say to do this, but I'm going to do it just to make sure. I'm just going to put the engine at the top dead centre just to make sure, so I'm just going to rotate it the normal way the engine goes, clockwise, until this lifts up to the top. There's a bit of a mark in there, but I want to make sure everything's all correct. Now you can see when you're TDC, because you've got your 2 little notches and your points there line up, and the lobe on the exhaust cam is about in that position, just about to go around, and this one goes around this way. This one's just opened to let the fuel in, and it's just closed, and now we're top dead centre. Just make sure when you put in any tool like this, it's quite big so it doesn't want to go down, bend or scratch the top of your cylinder head. So that's level, and that's how I've got it hooked on. Obviously that's going to turn backwards a few times until it catches on the screws. Put a bit of wood up there just to jam in that so it doesn't ping back. That's on there tight. I'm going to heat it up. I'm just going to mount the gearbox up with a bit of block of wood. I'm not taking the full weight of the engine, so it should be alright. I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts. We're going to take out the engine mount, which needs to come out anyway. These 2 are long, these 3 are short bolts. Underneath here there is a nut that also then connects from the underneath onto there, and that needs to come off as well. I think that's a 14 as well, 14mm, but you're going to need a long doofus for that one. You can see how much this is bent, the bar, even though it's reasonably flat. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mount it in the opposite way. And what I did that time was that way, so I'm going to turn it that way, and that should then help with the forces. So heating it up and using the electric Clarky impact drill hammer, bloody fucking impact hammer thing, got it out. Didn't really need too much of this, it was just doing it on its own, so it's good. And this should come out, if not, that comes out just like that, look. Perfect. And the good old Toyota's all keywayed, unlike the Renault. Cool, happy days. So not only did I bend this, just we straightened it out, but also look at the bloody bend on that as well. Obviously I thought that might bend because that's just quite mild steel, but this is like irony steel stuff. Again, it's mild, but it's quite hard. That's harder than what that is. But yeah, it's got a little bit of a bend to it. So we moved the belt. Now I'm just going to remove the water pump pulley and this assembly down here. So there's going to be like a screw right there, or a bolt right there, and then that one, and there's probably a third one underneath there. And I'll probably have to remove that idler, and then yeah, that should be getting towards it. These might have to go as well, I'm not too sure. So next I'm going to remove this idler and this idler. So this is a 14 double ender. So you have to use one, otherwise it just turns. This is quite stiff. Don't forget you've got the engine jacked up as well. So you've removed the mount, so you've got to be careful of the wobble. So this one's quite hard to see. It's hard to get to. 14mm on it. Socket will just get inside of here. So you undo it, tighten it back up a bit, and then use the spanner to undo this. Hopefully we don't have to undo this. And then you have to undo all that. This just about comes out. You've got just enough room. Mine undone from the nut there rather than from this bit here. So yeah, I just had enough room to get it out. But just check your bearings on these. Make sure they're not really loose or rattling and they turn smoothly. Don't forget to order a new one of these as well, because next time you come to take it out you might naff it up. Right, excuse the flicker. Right, now you have to remove this sensor, pluck that out, and actually take the sensor out. I think that's a 10 or an 8. I think it's a 10. Remove the crank sensor. Next we need to remove the VVT sensor. Unclip that, remove that bolt there, pull that out. A lot of these sensors you gotta push it down, then pull. There you go, yeah, push down then pull. Next Toyota recommends to remove the oil pan. Remove transverse engine mount. See, I've already done that. Remove the 5-bolt nut with the mount insulator, done that. Remove the belt low pressure bracket, well I've got that out without having to do that. Remove fan. Next we need to remove this. So there's 2 bolts. There's one just underneath down there and one there, and then one there, and I think one there. There might be another one on the underneath as well. That first one that's under there is a 12mm. That's a 14mm nut. That's a 14mm. But to get better access from this pipe, you might have to just jack up the engine again a little bit. This bolt here is actually too long to come out. So and underneath, and there's another 14mm. One underneath there to remove the rest of that mount. The engine mount, the longer screw goes at the top with the longer shroud. It's actually easier if you do undo this one as well and take it out. There's 2 bits. So now we're going to remove 10 bolts, studs around here. I think they're M10. I think this might be included as one, which I think is like an M12. And there's 2 bolts. One's in the recess down there, and I ain't got a clue where the other one is. So that top one was part of the 10. Just be careful, because down there you have got some water pipe bolts and you don't need to touch them. Now I've got to find the 2 bolts. There's also a 10mm wiring loom connector that goes up to there. That needs to come off, but then you can screw it back in. So the big long one, the 12 goes into here. The next one down is this long one, but that's a 10. And then they're all like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, starting from the top, going up and around. And then there's a bolt, that's by the water pump. And above there, there's another long one. And that other long one is this one here. And this one. And then my other bolt is literally just there. Well, I've just moved the bolt from there, don't remove that. My 10th bolt, or nut, was actually the one that the idler went into. It was the bolt, sorry. This one, I'm not too sure if it's supposed to come out. Now when trying to split the block, it just seemed like it didn't want to come out. and on the picture I've got, it says you've got to remove this. So unfortunately I had to use the mole grips on there and just start it off, but it's just an idler pulley, so it's not too important. I might just sand that off and then buy another one of these at some point and fit it. Now I'm slowly but surely working my way down. This stuff actually sticks quite well. I've been actually only going over it, apart from there where the bolts actually go in, because then there's less of a seal on there, but this is the top end, so it should be okay. Be a bit more careful on the bottom end. Now they call to remove the oil pan, so then I guess you grease it up all at once. I'm guessing maybe not that bolt, but this bolt holds in the bloody into there, you see. So you might have to remove them. So this pops off. And maybe take a chance not to, I don't know, it says remove the oil pan, doesn't it? Definitely have to remove these two. Now I ain't too sure when it comes to refitting. You have to like cut maybe there and there, this old silicone gaskety sealing stuff, and put some on. I know silicone and silicone don't like each other, so I have to come back up and around and keep an eye on it, otherwise it means ripping off this. Good news is I think once that's on I can rip this off without taking that off and replace it if it leaks. Right, and once you've undone those two screws it will pop out. As you can see down the bottom there, and by the way the cover comes up and out. It's a really tricky little thing to do. Then you come to put it on. Now there's this bit here, you just have to smear in here, I reckon. Smear in there with the pew, and then slide it back on and tighten it up good and proper. Need to remove this. They actually recommend buying a new one of them, so I bought a new one of them. Just be careful you don't gouge it. Then you got to remove the oil seal as well. Yeah, we've ordered a new one of them. I fucking hope I've ordered a new one of them. So wrap screwdriver in a bit of duct tape and just tap that down and through. There's a little spring thing that goes in there, and that's you get a new one of them on your new one. The crankshaft position sensor plate just comes out again. That's keyhole, and you can see that's the little bit that then gives you the little signal. There's a little push rod. You've got to push this little thing here down. So go down, and then you've got to pull that back, which is the tension. This little bar needs to go down. If that won't go down, you need to wiggle the camshaft, then you can push it down, and then that'll go down. You got to wiggle it whilst doing it. Then you got to push this back, hold it back, lift up this, and put in a 3mm bar, or like a drill bit I'm going to do, and then undo that bolt, and take this off. Now one trick with this is if you push it all the way in, it hasn't got a notch to go to, so you've got to let it out a notch or two. And that little bugger's covered in oil, because it operates by oil pressure, I think. See, there's that little lock, and that goes down there, and then it's got like a little ratchet thing, and then the oil goes in and pushes it forwards, and then it stops it from coming back via that little locking mechanism there. So next let's remove the other bit of this. That's just a rocker in there. There's a bolt down there, don't know if you can see. Remove this bit here, there's a bolt there. Might be free and the bolt there. And then remove this bolt here and this bolt here, and remove that bit, and then remove the chain. So just make sure they're all 10mm, all of those ones. This one's a 12, But just obviously make sure you don't drop anything into the oil pan, otherwise you'll be taking off the oil pan, which you might have to do later anyway, I'm not too sure. Now's the time to actually see difference in chain length, so you don't get the bloody thing muddled up. Okay, probably the easiest way of doing this, because the chain doesn't loop on itself correctly all the way, to line up these two. Already you can see the slight difference there in angle. See where they started off the same, and then this one's gradually got longer and longer to that one. So like before I fit anything else, I'm going to clean up all of this. I'm going to move the old sealant. I'm going to clean up any goop of oil traces. I'm going to use some bloody, what's it called, carb cleaner, if I've got any of that left, just to go around, just clean everything up. Same on the engine, see what parts I've got to fit. It's come with me in a little box. Obviously I've got a sprocket here, I've got another guard, that's the oil ring, got another sprocket there, got that guard, they didn't give me a bottom guard, and in here, oh, they give me a new, what's it called, tension, which I guess is quite important. So I'm going to clean up everything and then start fitting everything on there. So yeah, like obviously all this goop needs to come off, and then all around here that needs to be cleaned to make sure there's no goop on there. You can just gradually scratch that off, get rid of that with like a soft bit of plastic or something. You don't want anything too hard or metal that might gouge into it. And then same with there. What I'd also do is cover up that oil pan as well, just so no bits drop off in there. It's probably why they advise you to take it off actually. I've kind of just put some brown bag over there for us to clean up all of this. So then what I think I might do is then, once it's done, fill it all back up with oil and then drain it again, and then if there's any bits gone in down the bottom there, it will drain out. So what I've been doing is using an interior scraper. I've cling filmed up all the important bits, like all the oil filled bits, and I was clean. I start doing a bit here, do the top, clean up all around these bits, and then move down and gradually going around, making sure I don't get anything going in the oil sump. So I'm going to start off with the top. I've cling filmed down there as well, and we move them and then gradually replace that with more cling film, gradually work my way down. Just cleaning these little bits here, make sure those little bits are out. But the best way I found to actually get rid of that silicone all around there and there has been, you are going to scrape it, just admit it. You're going to use something to scrape with, get like one of these, get a brand new one that's nice and flat, or near enough new, bit of white spirit, and I use one of these because then you don't get any green bits, or you get less green bits by using one of these. Brand new ones, you get loads of little green bits come out of them, and then just wipe through with a cloth. And these bits in there, they're just like casting holes and stuff where it hasn't been skimmed. So just make sure you clean out all there. I'm going to do in this section now, so I'm just going to put cling film down here, do this section, clean that, and then move further down and carry on. So that's that bit clean. Down to there, you can see the way the machine and skimming tool went over. And I'm going to do the bottom bit. Don't forget to blow away any little bits and everything. And do the bottom under there. And that's that done. When we're moving the lower sprocket, there's a little keyway that fits in to just there. Careful that doesn't drop down into there. So the oval bit goes down into there. You fit the new upper sprocket. Make sure your little dot bit goes at the top. You can put a spanner just on that little bit there, the hex part, 64 Newton meters. This bloody camshaft sprocket, only do them up to bloody 12, not bloody 60 Newton meters. I think 12 Newton meters is enough. I've bloody elongated these, they start to stretch. One of them broke, so I had to get something similar, not exactly the same, but it's stainless steel. For some reason the old poxy bloody Haynes manual, yeah, no, 1, 2, 3, camshaft, sprocket bolt, 64. Everything else, maybe that's on the different engines, different. Everything else recommends about 12 Newton meters for the time and chain guides, and they're kind of exactly the same screws, stainless steel, so a bit softer. But yeah, 12 Newton meters. Make sure, see he's slightly going that way, but then he's slightly going that way. Use an adjustable spanner just to help it so it doesn't ping either way. So if this the crank spun around a bit too much, just put it in gear and put the wheel on and just rotate it back. Like, they advise you not to do that because you shouldn't have to turn an engine backwards, but all good. Right, so he's on there, black, roughly pointing up, goes down around that, and then you want to make sure those two little dots go into the middle of that one, that black one there. Next, install these. Now they say that these want to be 12 Newton meters. So that's the old one, and that's the new one. Not much difference, ain't hardly any difference in wear. It's got a little bit poking at the top, which is to do with the design. It might be that that's actually worn away. Maybe slightly bit different design. But yeah, these need to be 7.5 Newton meters. Again, the old one and the new one. Hardly any wear. Anyway, this wants to be 19 meters, Newton meters. So I've actually got in my kit a new one of these plunger bolty things, tensioners. Leave the hand grenade pin in. So I've installed the new plunger, 9 Newton meters on them. Pull out the little pin, and then it should. Maybe have to give it a little bit of a rock. There we go. I believe that's now tensioned up the chain. And when that goes around a few revolutions, it'll tighten up the slop here and here. And then just double check to make sure that has engaged. Might want to then just pull this back around and release the tensioner, but after a couple of goes that should even itself out. Clean and install the crank position sensor F to front. Make sure it goes in its key weight. Like yay. Next we're going to need to clean up all of this. We move all the gunk onto here and give this a good clean out. So after giving a general clean all over, making sure these are clear and free of anything, you don't want nothing funky going inside of there, and that one then inside of there. Done the outside a little bit, doesn't matter too much, you can make it perfect if you want. But next, I've done these as well, don't worry too much about the insides, because you're just going to get more spew. It's more the flat surface you've got to worry about. So we're going to put that washer in there. So they say about 1 mil like this side and 0.5 mil will say that side, but it just wants to be in roughly like that. Next we're gonna put in the new free thingy. It's the old one, the new one, there isn't much difference in it, but they recommend replacing it. And this was quite hard, that one's a bit more softer, so to make sure that's all clean and free of dirt. Next we'll use the goo. Yeah, you got to read this. You need to get quite a lot of stuff on this, and then you need to get it in within 3 minutes and tighten all the bolts within 15 minutes of applying the seal. Do not expose the seal to engine oil for at least 2 hours after installation. So they're all on and done and dusted. Apparently for 2 hours you can't let any of this silicone come in contact with any oil. So what I would say as well, definitely do this. Before you apply your silicone, your RVT, whatever you want to call it, to your cover, do a couple of dry runs. Do like 10 dry runs of it going in, because when it's going in and then you start getting it on here and there and everywhere else, it's a bloody nightmare. So do your runs first, make sure that you know where you're going with it. See, I've got loads on this water pump here, which that'll just come off once it's sort of dried. And the little screw down there, that screw is done up, isn't it? I'll check that in a minute. But then you got like 15 minutes to, you got 3 minutes once you put it on, and then you got 15 minutes to get all your torque right, torque settings. Next, going to put the engine mount on, big one, long one, down to the smaller one. So it's a long one, smaller one, and then the bolt goes onto one of these, and they're all 42 Newton meters. Prepare the auxiliary belt to go in before remounting on the other one of them. So if you can see, we need to screw all these in. There's 5 bolts and 1 nut that goes underneath, and now needs to be 52 Newton meters. And make sure you've got this bloody auxiliary belt on. Getting this in is a wiggle. You've got to wiggle the engine around, lower it, raise it to get it underneath here. Now I need to raise it and maybe push it back slightly because it's looking a bit forwards on the wonk. Next, install the engine mount insulator. So this is the pipe work in it, just a small little bolt. Needs a 10mm socket to go onto there, and that needs to be about 10 Newton meters. Next, install the 2 bloody oil pan ones that you took off there. They need to be 9 Newton meters. Next, the oil control valve and the bolt, which is 7.5 Newton meters. Next, we're going to install the idler pulley thing in there, and that's 44 Newton meters. Next, we're going to put in the crankshaft position sensor, and that's 7.5 Newton meters. So the water pump pulley on 4 new bolts. There is actually 2 little indents on that pulley that you can actually put your holding piece in there, but you have to get somebody to come underneath the car and hold it at the same time. And they're 12 Newton meters, but I'm just going to do them hand tight. So inspect the crankshaft bolt, look for the threads, make sure they're not, short, worn, funny colour, funny shape. This I'll use one more time, and I'll buy a new one. You see it started to curl up a little bit. This wants to be 150 Newton meters, and again you might have to use your tool just to hold the crank in place, or put the tyre on, put it in gear or something. The crank pulley bolt is on at 150 Newton meters using that tool. Job's good. So next I'm just going to clean around this seal here, and obviously take that off. Probably put the spark plug back in, and then clean the cylinder head as well, inside where the seal goes. Might clean up any underneath if there's any junk. So yeah, all I've done was clean around these areas, anywhere where the new seal is going to go and the clean on there, like all these bits, and then around here and here. Now this requires a bit of sealant basically, just to go on here, here, here and here, and then that goes on, and then you got to put them in at several different points. Connect these 3 bolts for your wiring harnesses, 8 Newton meters. I'm going to put on the breather pipey things like that. We're going to put the coils in, and they're 7.5 Newton meters. So when doing this, get this slightly tight, and tighten up this. So if you're still using your belt and it's in new condition, so you've got about a pretty forceful centimetre of travel, and this wants to be done up to about 22, or quite tight, not quite tight, but tightish. The bottom one needs to be done up to 44 on the bottom of the alternator one. Install your 3 bolts and your air filter to around 8 Newton meters, then put your mass airflow sensors in, your thing back on, and install this back in, and on that nut, which is 7.5 Newton meters. So next I'm going to fill it up with oil, that my old oil. Normally you'd be doing an oil filter change, but I only done one a couple of months ago. So I'm going to sieve that oil, put it into there, wait until it collects on the bottom, drain it and sieve it out, and then put it back in, just in case I've got any bits in the system. And then I'm going to start it up, check it, look for leaks, reset my little light on the dash, and hope for the best. Right, so I just topped it up, then I'm going to drain it again, I'm going to wait until all the oil seeps to the bottom, and I'm going to sieve it off, and then that should be it. Looks like a bit of a dead spider. Dead spider must have got in there overnight. I don't think there's too much grey stuff in there. There's a little bit more bits and bobs in there. Looks like another spider's leg. I'm going to turn the crank for the engine over 2 full rotations. And then just obviously check for oil leaks and keep an eye on it, making sure it's not leaking. It does sound a lot more smoother, and that light instantly went out. So it's all good.